I remember I was sitting in an auditorium at the movie theater. I believe it was for Longlegs. I was waiting for the movie to start while the previews passed me by. Typically, with movie trailers being played before the movie, I tend to watch with some sort of disinterest. Some of the trailers I had already seen many times prior, while others just looked bland. As I sat there waiting for the inevitable feature presentation, one trailer came along that perked me up and made me focus entirely on it. I had heard of this movie in passing prior to viewing this trailer on the big screen. I was intrigued, but I wasn't thinking too much of it at the time. It was a body horror film that was getting a lot of attention since its premiere at the Cannes Film Festival. I was reminded of the film Titan, another body horror film directed by a French woman. I had seen some promotional images of the film, and I found them to be reminiscent of a Kubrick production. I was with a friend in the theater when the trailer came on. From the very beginning, watching the scenes play out in quick bursts, I was almost immediately hooked. The sets, the performances, and the crazy concept of the narrative were too strong for me to ignore. My friend told me that she was also excited about it. We were in agreement that we had to go see it once it started showing. The Substance is a film that could have easily flopped under the wrong hands. Body horror, to be done right, requires the right hand behind it to pull it all together. Without this artistic touch, it can fall into being about gore for the sake of gore and not much else. No need for rewatching, and it could be thrown into the endless pile of exploitative dreck. The Substance, however, manages to add a compelling message to its already impressive production. This isn't some cheap, sleazy exploitation film, but a smart, empowering work that really resonated with me as well as many other audience members. I would consider this a great midnight movie, but one of the highest caliber. The story, on the surface, is quite simple. A woman, being viewed as past her prime, discovers a way to bring herself back to the fame she garnered decades prior. She soon discovers, however, that there are consequences to her actions. Despite how basic this may sound, the director, Coralie Farge, adds a feminist touch to the proceedings which strengthen the cautionary tale. I pointed out to my friend the observation that this film was clearly made by a woman, as I don't see any man being able to capture this exact vision and some of the personal touches throughout the narrative. She agreed, and she added that women tend to take a unique turn with the genre of body horror that stands apart from those of their male counterparts, and we both likened the film to the works of Julia Ducournau. One element that easily makes the film great, and that is getting deserved acclaim this award season, are the performances. Demi Moore and Margaret Qualley are obviously the standouts here. There's a reason for the buzzings going on currently for them. They are playing what is essentially the same character, and each character represents two sides of the same coin. An apt comparison would be to Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Despite being essentially the same character, the two sides are very different in terms of personality and goals. One is feeling dissatisfaction with her body, while the other is constantly in the spotlight and proud to show off. Both actresses pull off these differences well, but are also able to show in some ways that they are still one. A message that is repeated by the disembodied voice of the company behind the substance. It is no wonder that both performances are receiving so much acclaim. It is criminal, though, that Margaret Qualley didn't receive an Oscar nomination for Best Supporting Actress. Another great performance that isn't being talked about as much is, of course, Dennis Quaid as Harvey. Quaid portrays the perfect scumbag network executive who is focused on ratings and profit and is okay with pushing people out of one of the programs if they are no longer, in his view, providing an audience for him. Elizabeth, now being in her 50s, is sadly seen as too old and lacking sex appeal. At the start, she is seen to be doing good with the show that she has been given, but once she overhears Harvey talking about finding a replacement for her, this begins her spiral into desperation and her use of the eponymous substance. Speaking of this green fluid, I like that the only thing that is revealed is the name of the substance being, well, the substance, and the logo of the company that seemingly manufactures the liquid. During a Q&A with Coralie Farge, Guillermo del Toro says that he appreciated her not explaining and revealing the company behind the substance. I agree with this assessment. Under the wrong hands, there would be a whole plot unearthing the company and its sinister intentions. This would serve as needless exposition and execution that would take away from the core of the film. The company is not important to what plays out on screen besides being the facilitators behind the substance. Something that quite caught me off guard was how funny this movie was. There were intentionally hammy moments, but there were also scenes involving a sort of slapstick. The best comedic moments for me were the awkward interactions. This happens in several scenes where two characters are talking and the conversation can be either hilarious or unsettling. Pretty much any scene with Harvey is like this. He is loud and bombastic and likes to present himself as royalty. Anytime he interacts with Elizabeth or Sue, he is overbearing and vies to be the center of attention. His scenes are just a few of the examples of the bizarre and hysterical conversations of the film. It is extremely satisfying to view a film released in 2024 that primarily uses practical effects. I'm not some snob against CGI, but it is great to see something created practically in this digital age. The gruesome moments of body horror look incredible, and, depending on the budget and execution, CG wouldn't have been as aesthetically pleasing. Another issue that CG may have presented was that it may not have been as gross due to a polished sheen. Going almost full practical allowed for the effects team to realize some truly disgusting imagery. Watching this movie, a viewer may experience feelings of disgust, humor, and sadness. The movie is balanced on these seemingly opposed emotions. Some may see this as too much of a whiplash, while others, such as myself, grow ever more engrossed by these. The multiple emotions that I felt overlapping truly made for a memorable and enriching viewing experience. I have said this to several people. While horror may be my favorite genre, I'm not a huge fan of super gory movies. I tend to veer towards the psychological in regards to the genre. The substance, while having some truly graphic scenes that involve blood and guts, is an example on how gore should be done. If gore is used too much and done for the sake of it, it loses any power it might have had otherwise. There's also the fact that the gore in the film complements the narrative and themes well. There's a reason for the gore to be as brutal as it is, and the best part is that, in the end, it doesn't feel like cheap exploitation, but rather a sincere, cautionary tale on not allowing social expectations to turn you into something you are not. The Substance is certainly a special type of film. Upon walking out of the auditorium, I immediately declared it a masterpiece. Even months after watching it, I can't help but think back on this film. I wanted this review to be relatively brief as I plan on making an in-depth analysis on the film that goes over almost every scene and discusses what makes it great in terms of visual storytelling and thematics. While I am tempted to recommend this film to almost anybody, I do realize that the unique plot and disturbing scenery will not be to everyone's liking. If any of what I have discussed piques your curiosity, then find a way to watch this film. Coralie Farge has easily become one of my favorite modern filmmakers, and I greatly anticipate what she has coming next.